The helicopter crashed 3 feet away from Madison Clark's table. She dove behind the marble counter of Brew and Blues Cafe, covering her head as glass exploded in every direction. The deafening roar was followed by collective screams, overturned chairs, and the desperate scramble of 20 customers trying to escape through the back door. "Holy shit!" Madison yelled, still crouched on the floor, her heart hammering against her ribs like a caged bird. When the chaos finally settled, she slowly raised her head. Black smoke billowed from the parking lot, and through the shattered window, she watched a man emerge from the wreckage. Tall, impeccably dressed in a navy suit that somehow didn't have a single tear, he brushed debris off his shoulders like he'd just walked through a light drizzle. "That's impossible," Madison whispered, still processing what she'd witnessed. The man, who'd apparently survived a helicopter crash without a scratch, looked directly at her through the broken window. His steel blue eyes found hers, and he smiled, a confident, irritatingly charming smile that made her stomach flip. Then he walked into the cafe. "Sorry about the dramatic entrance," he announced to the shell-shocked crowd, adjusting his tie. "Insurance will cover everything. I'm looking for Madison Clark, trauma nurse, graduated summa cum laude from UCLA, currently between jobs due to budget cuts at Cedar General Hospital." Madison's blood turned to ice. How did he know all that? Everyone in the cafe turned to stare at her. Slowly she stood up, her legs shaking like a newborn foal's. I'm Madison Clark. How do you—" "Perfect," he interrupted, walking toward her with the confidence of a man who'd never been told no in his life. Glass crunched under his Italian leather shoes. "Cameron Blackwood, I need to make you an offer that will solve both our problems." Madison's eyes widened. Even she knew that name. Blackwood Industries, tech empire, real estate mogul, probably worth more than some small countries. "You're the Cameron Blackwood? The one who just bought half of downtown LA? Guilty as charged." He extended his hand. "And you're the woman who's been sending resumes to every hospital in California for the past 6 months, getting rejected because of the nursing shortage crisis that's actually a budget crisis in disguise." Madison stared at his outstretched hand. "Have you been stalking me?" "I prefer extensive background research. You have exactly 17 days before you're evicted from your apartment in Sherman Oaks. Your mother needs a cardiac surgery that costs $180,000. Your student loans are in default, and you've been living off ramen noodles and hope for the past 2 months. Her face burned with embarrassment and anger. "What the hell gives you the right to—" $3 million, he said simply. Madison's mouth snapped shut. "I'm sorry, what?" $3 million, tax-free, plus all medical expenses for your mother's surgery and a full-time cardiac nurse for her recovery. Your student loans paid off, a new apartment wherever you want." Madison felt dizzy. In exchange for what? Cameron's smile faltered for just a moment, and she caught a glimpse of something desperate in his eyes. Marriage, 1 year, completely platonic, separate bedrooms, separate lives. After 12 months, we get divorced. You get the money, and we never see each other again. You're insane. I'm desperate, he corrected. My grandfather wrote the most ridiculous will in legal history. To inherit Blackwood Industries, I need to be married by midnight tonight and stay married for 1 year. Otherwise, everything goes to my cousin Derek, who will run the company into the ground within 6 months. Madison looked around the destroyed cafe, at the other customers still filming everything with their phones, at the helicopter wreckage still smoldering outside. Why me? You could marry any socialite in Beverly Hills. Because they all want something real. Love, commitment, a fairy tale. Cameron's voice was matter-of-fact. You're practical. You understand this is business, and according to my research, you're the only woman in Los Angeles who's never tried to slide into my DMs. That's because I didn't know you existed until 5 minutes ago. Even better. Madison's mind raced. $3 million. Her mother's surgery. A future that didn't involve choosing between rent and food. This is crazy, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. Crazy profitable, Cameron countered. For both of us. I get my inheritance, you get financial security. It's a win-win business arrangement. What if we can't stand each other? Then we'll be very rich people who can't stand each other. I've had worse roommates. Despite everything, Madison found herself fighting a smile. What if you're a serial killer? Then I'm a very inefficient one, considering I just saved your life by giving you enough money to move out of that neighborhood before someone actually dangerous finds you. Hey, Madison protested. Sherman Oaks isn't that bad. Madison, your apartment building has been condemned twice in the past year. She winced. He wasn't wrong. Cameron pulled out his phone and showed her a contract. I had my lawyers draw this up. Every detail, every protection, every clause designed to make this as painless as possible for both of us. Madison stared at the document. The numbers were real. The legal language was solid. This wasn't a joke or a scam. I need to think about this, she said. Unfortunately, we don't have time to think. The wedding needs to happen in... He checked his watch. 4 hours. Private jet to Las Vegas is waiting at LAX. 4 hours? I know it's fast, but... Fast? It's supersonic. Madison ran her hands through her hair. I can't just marry a stranger. You're not marrying a stranger. You're entering into a business partnership with excellent benefits. Madison looked at him, really looked at him. Despite the arrogance, despite the insanity of the situation, there was something genuine in his eyes. Something that told her he was as scared as she was. What happens if I say no? I lose everything I've worked for my entire life. Derek destroys a company that employs 50,000 people. And you... He paused, his expression softening slightly. You go back to eating ramen and hoping for miracles. Madison closed her eyes. When she opened them, Cameron was watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch. If I say yes, and I'm not saying I am, what happens next? We fly to Vegas, get married at a chapel that specializes in making this sort of thing legal and binding, fly back, and tomorrow you wake up as Madison Blackwood, multi-millionaire. And then? Then you live your life. I live mine. We see each other at a few public events to maintain appearances, and in 1 year, we shake hands and go our separate ways. Madison stared at the contract on his phone. $3 million. Her mother's surgery. A future. This is the most insane thing anyone has ever asked me to do, she said. Is that a yes? Madison looked around the destroyed cafe one more time. At the helicopter wreckage. At the man who'd literally crashed into her life with an offer that sounded too good to be true. Then she thought about her mother in the hospital. About the stack of rejection letters on her kitchen table. About the eviction notice that would arrive in 17 days. It's a yes, she said, extending her hand. Cameron's smile was brilliant as he shook it. Welcome to the family business, Mrs. Blackwood. The handshake lasted a beat too long, and Madison felt something electric pass between them. From the look in Cameron's eyes, he felt it too. Just one question, Madison said as they walked toward the door. How did you survive that helicopter crash without a scratch? Cameron grinned. Remote control, the pilot ejected 2 miles away. I was never in any real danger. You staged a helicopter crash to get my attention? I needed to make an impression. Did it work? Madison looked at the destruction around them, then at the private jet descending toward the parking lot to pick them up. Yeah, she said, unable to keep the smile off her face. It worked. 4 hours later, Madison Clark became Madison Blackwood in a Vegas chapel that smelled like roses and regret, married to a man she'd known for less than a day, about to inherit more money than she'd ever dreamed of. And the strangest part? She was actually excited to see what happened next. Madison woke up in a bed that cost more than her annual salary. Silk sheets, Egyptian cotton, a mattress that felt like sleeping on a cloud made of marshmallows and dreams. For a blissful 30 seconds, she thought she was having the best dream of her life. Then she remembered. Vegas chapel. I do. A kiss that lasted exactly 2.3 seconds and somehow made her toes curl. A private jet back to Los Angeles. And now, she was married to Cameron Blackwood. "Oh God," she whispered, sitting up and looking around the master bedroom of what could only be described as a palace disguised as a house. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed a view of the Hollywood Hills that probably cost more than most people's homes. A soft knock interrupted her panic attack. "Mrs. Blackwood?" A woman's voice, crisp and professional. "Mr. Blackwood asked me to inform you that breakfast is ready, and your new wardrobe has arrived." Madison wrapped the silk robe around herself. When had she changed into pajamas? And opened the door to find a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and an amused smile. "I'm Margaret, the house manager. And before you ask, yes, you changed clothes yourself last night. You were very insistent about your privacy, even though you could barely walk straight." "I wasn't drunk," Madison protested, then paused. "Was I?" "Exhausted. Mr. Blackwood carried you upstairs, left you at the door, and slept in the guest room. Very gentlemanly, considering." Madison felt her cheeks burn. "He carried me?" "Like a bride," Margaret said with a knowing smile. "Which, technically, you are." 20 minutes later, Madison found herself in the most beautiful dining room she'd ever seen, wearing a designer dress that fit her perfectly and probably cost more than her car. Cameron sat at the head of an enormous table, reading the Wall Street Journal and looking like he'd stepped out of a magazine. "Good morning, wife," he said without looking up. "How did you sleep?" "Like the dead. That bed is ridiculous." "It should be. I spent 3 months researching the perfect mattress." He folded the paper and looked at her, his expression unreadable. "We need to talk." Madison's stomach dropped. "Are you having second thoughts? Because if you are, I can give the money back." "Madison." His voice was gentle but firm. "Sit down. Eat something. You're going to need your strength." She sat, and immediately Margaret appeared with a breakfast that looked like it belonged in a 5-star restaurant. Fresh fruit, perfectly cooked eggs, artisanal bread, and coffee that smelled like heaven. "We need to establish some ground rules," Cameron said, pouring her orange juice. "Starting with the fact that as of this morning, you're the most photographed woman in America." "What?" Madison nearly choked on her coffee. Cameron slid his tablet across the table. The screen showed a gossip website with a headline that made her blood freeze. "Billionaire bachelor Cameron Blackwood secretly marries mystery woman." Below it were photos. Lots of photos. Her walking out of the Vegas chapel. Her getting into the private jet. Her looking shell-shocked and beautiful and completely overwhelmed. "Oh no," she whispered. "Oh no, oh no, oh no." "It gets better," Cameron said dryly. "Look at the comments." Madison scrolled down and immediately regretted it. The comments ranged from cruel speculation about her motives to detailed analysis of her appearance, with a few marriage proposals thrown in for good measure. "I can't do this," she said, pushing the tablet away. "I'm not cut out for this kind of attention." "Madison, look at me." She raised her eyes to meet his, and the kindness she saw there surprised her. "I know this is overwhelming. I know you didn't sign up for paparazzi and gossip columns. But I need you to trust me, okay? I've been dealing with this my whole life. I can protect you." "How?" "First, we control the narrative. Margaret has already contacted my publicist. We're going to release a statement about our whirlwind romance and how we've been secretly dating for months. We'll do exactly 3 interviews, all carefully scripted, and then we retreat into private life." Madison nodded slowly. "What else?" "Second, you get a security detail." "I know it sounds excessive, but—" "Security detail?" Madison's voice pitched higher. "Are you serious?" "Dead serious. You're married to me now, which makes you a target for everything from overzealous fans to corporate espionage. I'm not taking any chances with your safety." Madison set down her fork. "Cameron, I can't live like this. I can't be followed around by bodyguards and have my every move photographed. I'll go insane." Cameron was quiet for a long moment. What if I told you it gets easier? Does it? Eventually. And in the meantime, you have me. Something in his voice made her look at him more carefully. What do you mean? I mean, I know this world. I know how to navigate it. I know how to make the media lose interest, how to give them just enough to keep them satisfied without giving them everything. He reached across the table and covered her hand with his. I won't let them destroy you, Madison. I promise. The warmth of his hand on hers sent electricity up her arm. She tried to ignore it and focus on the conversation, but his thumb was tracing small circles on her wrist, and it was incredibly distracting. What's the third rule? She asked, her voice slightly breathless. Cameron's eyes darkened. We maintain the illusion of being a happily married couple, which means... He stood up and walked around the table to where she sat. We need to be comfortable with each other, physically. Madison's heart started racing. What do you mean, physically? I mean, if we're going to convince people we're madly in love, we need to be able to touch each other without looking like we're afraid of catching something contagious. He held out his hand. Stand up. Madison hesitated, then took his hand and stood. They were closer now, close enough that she could smell his cologne and see the flecks of gold in his blue eyes. Put your arms around my neck, he said softly. Cameron, I don't think... Trust me. Slowly, Madison lifted her arms and linked them around his neck. Cameron's hands settled on her waist, and they stood there like that for a moment, just breathing. This is weird, Madison whispered. It's supposed to be natural, Cameron replied. We're married. We should be able to hold each other without looking like we're in pain. I'm not in pain. No? His hands tightened slightly on her waist. Then why are you holding your breath? Madison realized she was, in fact, holding her breath. She let it out slowly, and as she did, her body relaxed against his. Better, Cameron murmured. Now what would you do if I leaned down and kissed you right now? Madison's eyes widened. I don't know. You'd kiss me back, he said with certainty, because that's what married couples do. They kiss, they touch, they look at each other like they can't wait to be alone together. Do they? Madison's voice was barely above a whisper. They do. Cameron's face was inches from hers now. And if we're going to pull this off, we need to practice. Practice kissing? Practice everything. Holding hands, casual touches, looking like we're in love. His thumb brushed against her cheek. Think you can handle that? Madison's brain had apparently stopped working. All she could think about was how warm his hands were, how good he smelled, how his lips were right there and she could just lean forward and... Madison? She blinked and stepped back, breaking the spell. Yes, I can handle it. It's just acting, right? Something flickered across Cameron's expression too quickly for her to read. Right, just acting. The moment was broken by Margaret clearing her throat from the doorway. Excuse me, Mr. Blackwood, but your grandfather is on the phone. He says it's urgent. Cameron's entire demeanor changed. I'll take it in my office. He looked at Madison. We'll continue this conversation later. In the meantime, Margaret will show you around the house and help you get settled. He started to leave, then turned back. And Madison, don't leave the property without security. Please. After he left, Madison sank back into her chair, her heart still racing. He's not what I expected, she said to Margaret. No, Margaret agreed, refilling Madison's coffee cup. He's not what anyone expects. That's what makes him so dangerous. Dangerous how? Margaret smiled. You'll figure it out soon enough, dear. You'll figure it out soon enough. 2 hours later, Madison had been given the grand tour of what she was now supposed to call home. 8 bedrooms, 12 bathrooms, a library that looked like something out of Beauty and the Beast, a gym that rivaled most professional facilities, and a pool that belonged in a resort. This is insane, she muttered, standing in the walk-in closet that was bigger than her old apartment. It was full of clothes in her exact size, all bearing designer labels she'd only seen in magazines. "Mr. Blackwood had everything delivered this morning," Margaret explained. "He has excellent taste. He had my size exactly right. He's very thorough when he wants something." Madison pulled out a sundress that probably cost more than her monthly rent. "Margaret, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "How long have you worked for Cameron?" 15 years. Since he was 22 and just starting to take over parts of the company." "What was he like then?" Margaret was quiet for a moment. "Lonely," she said finally. "Brilliant, driven, absolutely ruthless in business. But lonely. His parents died when he was young, and his grandfather raised him to be a CEO, not a person. He's never had many friends, and he certainly never had a relationship that lasted more than a few months. Why not? Because he's never met anyone who wanted him for himself instead of his money. Until now, apparently." Madison felt a pang of guilt. "Margaret, I should tell you that this is a business arrangement?" Margaret's eyes twinkled. "Oh, my dear. I've been managing this house for 15 years. I know exactly what this is. The question is, do you know what it's going to become?" Before Madison could ask what she meant, her phone buzzed. A text from Cameron. "Pool. 1 hour. Bring a swimsuit. We're practicing being a couple in public." Madison stared at the message. "Margaret, I think I'm in trouble." "Oh, you most certainly are," Margaret agreed cheerfully. "But it's the best kind of trouble, trust me." An hour later, Madison stood by the pool in a bikini that fit her perfectly and left very little to the imagination. Cameron was already in the water, and when he saw her, his expression made her feel like the most beautiful woman in the world. "Come on in," he called. "The water's perfect." Madison dipped her toe in and immediately understood why rich people had pools. The water was the perfect temperature, and it felt like silk against her skin. "This is for practice?" she asked, sliding into the water. "Absolutely. Tomorrow we're going to a charity gala. There will be cameras, reporters, and about 500 of the most gossipy people in Los Angeles. We need to look like we can't keep our hands off each other." Cameron moved closer, and Madison's breath caught. In the water, with the sunlight playing across his shoulders and his hair damp from swimming, he looked like something out of a movie. "Like this?" he said, wrapping his arms around her waist and pulling her close. Madison's hands automatically went to his chest, and she could feel his heartbeat under her palms. "This feels real. Good. It's supposed to." They moved together in the water, practicing the kind of casual intimacy that married couples took for granted. Cameron's hands on her waist, guiding her movements. Madison's fingers tracing the line of his collarbone. Small touches that sent shivers through both of them. "There's something else we need to practice," Cameron said, his voice rough. "What's that?" "Kissing. In public. We need to be able to kiss without looking like it's the first time." Madison's heart stopped. "We kissed at the wedding. That was a peck. This is different. This is..." He cupped her face in his hands. "This is making people believe we're crazy about each other. Are we going to practice now? Do you want to?" Madison looked into his eyes and saw something that made her pulse race. This wasn't just about the deal anymore. This was about the electricity that crackled between them every time they were in the same room. "Yes," she whispered. Cameron's mouth came down on hers, and the world exploded. This wasn't a practice kiss. This was a kiss that made her forget her own name, her own past, her own reasons for being there. Cameron's lips were warm and skilled, and when his tongue traced the seam of her mouth, she opened for him without thinking. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathing hard. Was that good enough?" Madison asked weakly. Cameron's eyes were dark with something that looked like hunger. "It's a start." That night, Madison lay in her enormous bed, staring at the ceiling and trying to process what was happening to her. She'd entered into a business arrangement. A simple, straightforward deal that would solve all her problems. So why did she feel like she was falling for her fake husband, And more importantly, what was she going to do about it? The Beverly Hills Hotel ballroom glittered like a jewelry store had exploded. Madison stood at the entrance, wearing a midnight blue gown that hugged her curves in all the right places and probably cost more than some people's cars. Diamond earrings, borrowed from Cameron's family collection, caught the light every time she moved her head. "I feel like I'm wearing someone else's life," she whispered to Cameron, who looked devastating in his black tuxedo. "You look incredible," he murmured back, his hand warm on the small of her back. "Just remember, we're madly in love. We can't keep our hands off each other, and we're definitely not here because of a business arrangement." "Got it. Madly in love. Can't keep hands to ourselves. Definitely not a fake marriage for inheritance purposes." Cameron's laugh was genuine. "You're going to be fine. Just follow my lead." The moment they stepped into the ballroom, the entire room seemed to shift their attention. Conversations paused mid-sentence. Phone cameras discreetly appeared. Madison felt like a deer caught in headlights. "Breathe," Cameron whispered, pressing a kiss to her temple that made her knees weak. "And smile. You're supposed to be having the time of your life." "I am having the time of my life," Madison said, and realized she wasn't entirely lying. "This is just a lot." "Cameron!" a voice boomed across the room. A distinguished man in his 60s approached them with arms outstretched. "And this must be the famous Mrs. Blackwood we've all been dying to meet." "Madison, this is Richard Steinberg, CEO of Pinnacle Entertainment. Richard, my wife, Madison." Madison extended her hand, but Richard pulled her into a hug that lasted slightly too long and felt slightly too familiar. "Absolutely stunning," Richard said, his eyes lingering on her neckline. "Cameron, you lucky bastard. How did you manage to keep this beauty secret for so long?" Cameron's arm tightened around Madison's waist. "Some things are worth waiting for." "Indeed they are." Richard's smile was predatory. "Madison, darling, you simply must meet my wife, Patricia. She's dying to know all about your whirlwind romance." 20 minutes later, Madison found herself surrounded by a group of society wives who peppered her with questions that felt more like an interrogation. "So how long have you and Cameron been dating?" asked Patricia Steinberg, a woman whose face had clearly seen more plastic surgery than a Barbie factory. "Oh, you know how it is," Madison said vaguely. "Time flies when you're having fun." "But it must have been quite a whirlwind," pressed another woman, Victoria something or other. "I mean, none of us had even heard your name before this week." Madison felt trapped. "Cameron's very private about his personal life." "How refreshingly old-fashioned," Patricia said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "And what is it you do, dear? Besides being beautiful, of course." "I'm a nurse." The temperature in the group seemed to drop 10 degrees. "A nurse," Victoria repeated slowly. "How practical." "Very noble," Patricia added in a tone that suggested it was anything but. "Cameron's always been drawn to charitable causes." Madison felt her cheeks burn, but before she could respond, a warm hand settled on her shoulder. "Ladies," Cameron's voice was smooth as silk and twice as dangerous. "Mind if I steal my wife for a dance?" As he led her toward the dance floor, Madison could hear the whispers starting behind them. "Are you okay?" Cameron asked, once they were safely away from the gossip circle. "Peachy," Madison said through gritted teeth. "Your friends are lovely. Really know how to make a girl feel welcome." "They're not my friends. They're vultures in designer gowns." Cameron spun her expertly to the music. "And they're jealous." "Of what?" "Of the fact that I married someone real instead of another trophy wife with a trust fund and an eating disorder." Madison looked up at him. "Is that what you think I am? Real?" Something shifted in Cameron's expression. "You're the realest person I've ever met." The song ended, and Madison was about to respond when a familiar voice cut through the music. "Well, well. If it isn't the happy couple." Madison turned to see a woman approaching them, tall, blonde, and beautiful in the way that suggested expensive maintenance. She wore a red dress that probably cost more than Madison's car and moved with the confidence of someone who'd never been told no. Cameron's entire body tensed. "Victoria." "Hello, darling." The woman, Victoria, leaned in and kissed Cameron's cheek with the familiarity of someone who'd done it 1,000 times before. "Congratulations on your sudden nuptials. Victoria, this is my wife, Madison. Madison, Victoria Harrington." Madison extended her hand, but Victoria barely glanced at it. "So you're the little nurse who caught our Cameron's eye," Victoria said, looking Madison up and down like she was evaluating livestock. "How fascinating." "It's nice to meet you," Madison said, though it really wasn't. "Oh, the pleasure's all mine. Cameron and I have such a history. Don't we, darling?" Cameron's jaw tightened. "That was a long time ago, Victoria. 2 months ago is hardly ancient history." Victoria's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. "I have to say, I was surprised to hear about your engagement, especially since you were in my bed just 8 weeks ago." Madison felt like she'd been slapped. She looked at Cameron, whose face had gone pale. "Victoria?" "Oh, don't worry, darling. I'm not bitter. Well, perhaps a little." Victoria's laugh was like broken crystal. "I just think it's romantic how quickly you got over our little affair. True love conquers all, doesn't it?" Madison felt sick. 8 weeks ago. Right around the time Cameron would have learned about his grandfather's will. "Excuse me," Madison said quietly. "I need some air." She walked away before either of them could respond, making her way through the crowd toward the terrace doors. Behind her, she could hear Cameron calling her name, but she didn't stop. The terrace was mercifully empty and cool. Madison gripped the marble railing and tried to breathe. She shouldn't be upset. This was a business arrangement. Cameron's romantic history was none of her business, so why did she feel like crying? "Madison." She turned to find Cameron standing in the doorway, his expression torn between anger and concern. "Don't," she said, holding up a hand. "Just don't. Let me explain." "Explain what? That you were sleeping with someone else 2 months ago?" "Cameron, we're not really married. You don't owe me an explanation for your love life." Cameron stepped closer. "Yes, I do." "No, you don't. This is a business deal, remember? You said so yourself." "Madison, were you with her 8 weeks ago?" Cameron was quiet for a long moment. "Yes." Madison nodded, hating how much that single word hurt. "Okay. But it wasn't. It doesn't matter what it was." Madison forced a smile. "We should go back inside. People will start to talk if the happy newlyweds disappear." "Screw what people think." "Easy for you to say. You're not the gold-digging nurse who trapped the billionaire bachelor." Cameron's eyes flashed. "Is that what you think they're saying?" "It's what they're thinking. I saw it in their faces." Madison wrapped her arms around herself. "Maybe they're right. They're not right." Cameron moved closer, his voice fierce. "You're nothing like what they think you are." "How do you know? You've known me for 3 days." "I know because—" Cameron stopped abruptly. "Because what?" He was quiet for so long that Madison thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft. "Because you chose the guest bedroom." Madison frowned. "What?" "The first night, when you were exhausted and could barely stand. I carried you upstairs, and when I asked which room you wanted, you chose the guest room. Not the master bedroom, not my room, the guest room. So, every other woman I've ever known would have tried to get into my bed, deal or no deal. But you chose your own space, your own independence." Cameron's eyes met hers. "You married me for the money, yes, but you didn't marry me to trap me or to change our agreement. You married me because you needed help, and you were brave enough to take an insane risk to get it." Madison stared at him. "Cameron." "Victoria was nothing," he said firmly. "A mistake, a distraction, someone to pass time with while I figured out how to deal with my grandfather's ridiculous will." You don't have to. I want to. Cameron reached out and cupped her face gently. Madison, what's happening between us? This isn't part of the deal. This isn't something I planned or expected. Madison's heart started racing. What are you saying? I'm saying that somewhere between the helicopter crash and right now, this stopped being just business for me. Before Madison could respond, the terrace doors burst open and Victoria appeared, followed by what looked like half the party. Oh, how romantic. Victoria's voice carried perfectly to the gathered crowd. A lover's quarrel on the terrace. How very dramatic. Madison realized with horror that Victoria had orchestrated this. The entire confrontation, the dramatic exit, the private conversation, it had all been designed to create a scene. Cameron, darling, Victoria continued, her voice loud enough for everyone to hear. I do hope I didn't cause any trouble between you and your bride. I was only sharing fond memories. The crowd murmured and shifted, phone cameras appearing like magic. Madison felt trapped, exposed, humiliated. You want a show? Cameron said quietly, his voice dangerous. Cameron, don't... But it was too late. Cameron turned to face the crowd, his arm sliding around Madison's waist and pulling her close. Since everyone seems so interested in my marriage, he said, his voice carrying clearly across the terrace, let me make something perfectly clear. He turned to Madison, his eyes intense. I love you, he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. I've loved you since the moment I met you, and I'll love you for the rest of my life. Then he kissed her. Not the careful, practiced kiss they'd shared by the pool. This was a kiss that claimed her, possessed her, branded her as his in front of everyone watching. Madison melted into it without thinking, her arms winding around his neck as the world disappeared around them. When they broke apart, the crowd was silent. Victoria's face was a mask of fury, and Madison could see phone cameras capturing every moment. Now, Cameron said calmly, if you'll excuse us, I'd like to dance with my wife. As they walked back into the ballroom, Madison's head was spinning. Did you mean it? She whispered. Which part? Any of it. Cameron stopped walking and turned to face her, his expression serious. Every word. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. They danced, they mingled, they played the part of the perfect couple. But underneath it all, Madison could feel something fundamental shifting between them. This wasn't just a business deal anymore. This was something real, something terrifying, something that could destroy them both if they weren't careful. But as Cameron spun her around the dance floor, his eyes never leaving hers, Madison realized she was past the point of being careful. She was falling in love with her fake husband. And from the way he was looking at her, she was pretty sure he was falling too. The question was, what were they going to do about it? Later that night, they rode home in comfortable silence, both lost in their own thoughts. It wasn't until they were standing in the foyer of Cameron's house that Madison found her voice. So, she said, suddenly nervous. That was intense, Cameron finished. Yeah. They stood there for a moment, just looking at each other. The air between them was charged with possibility and danger. Madison, Cameron said softly. Yeah? I meant what I said tonight, all of it. Madison's heart skipped a beat. Cameron, I know this complicates things. I know it's not what we agreed to. But I can't pretend anymore that this is just business. Madison looked into his eyes and saw her own feelings reflected back at her. Want, need, love. So what do we do now? She whispered. Cameron smiled, and it was the most beautiful thing she'd ever seen. Now, he said, reaching for her hand, we stop pretending. Madison woke up to the smell of coffee and the sound of hushed, angry voices coming from downstairs. She grabbed a robe and crept to the top of the stairs, her heart sinking as she recognized the second voice. Derek Blackwood, Cameron's cousin, and the man who would inherit everything if their marriage failed. Completely insane Cameron. Grandfather's been dead for 2 days, and you're playing house with some random nurse. She's not random, and we're not playing house. Cameron's voice was dangerously calm. We're married. For how long? A week? Face it, cousin. This whole charade is going to blow up in your face. And when it does, I'll be waiting. Madison pressed herself against the wall, trying to process what she'd just heard. Grandfather's been dead for 2 days. But that was impossible. Cameron had spoken to his grandfather on the phone just yesterday morning. Get out of my house, Derek. Gladly. But when your little wife realizes what she's gotten herself into, don't come crying to me. The front door slammed, and Madison heard Cameron's footsteps heading toward his office. She stood frozen on the stairs, her mind racing. Cameron's grandfather was dead, had been dead since before the charity gala, which meant, Madison? Margaret's voice came from below. Are you all right, dear? You look like you've seen a ghost. Margaret, Madison said carefully, when did Mr. Blackwood Sr. pass away? Margaret's face went pale. Oh dear, you weren't supposed to. Mr. Cameron should have told you himself. Told me what? Margaret wrung her hands. He died Monday night, dear. Peaceful, in his sleep. The funeral is tomorrow. Monday night, 2 days before the charity gala. 2 days before Cameron had declared his love in front of half of Los Angeles. Madison felt sick. She found Cameron in his office, staring out the window with a glass of whiskey in his hand despite the fact that it wasn't even noon. Your grandfather's dead, she said without preamble. Cameron's shoulders tensed, but he didn't turn around. Yes. For 2 days. Yes. And you didn't tell me. Finally, Cameron turned to face her. His eyes were red-rimmed, and she realized he'd been crying. I couldn't, he said simply. Why not? Cameron set down his glass and ran both hands through his hair. Because if I told you he was dead, you'd want to know why we were still married, and I wasn't ready to answer that question. Madison's heart started racing. What do you mean? I mean the will is read tomorrow. I officially inherit everything at noon. Our agreement was for 1 year, but... Cameron met her eyes. The marriage clause only required me to be married when he died. Technically, we could get divorced tomorrow afternoon, and you'd still get your money. The words hit Madison like a physical blow. So this has all been... what? An extended performance? No. Cameron moved toward her, but she stepped back. Madison, what I said last night. What you said last night was a lie, just like everything else. It wasn't a lie. Then why didn't you tell me your grandfather was dead? Why did you let me think we still needed to pretend? Cameron was quiet for a long moment. Because I wasn't pretending anymore. That's convenient. It's the truth. Madison laughed, but it came out bitter. How am I supposed to know what's true with you? You've been lying to me since the moment we met. I never lied to you. You lied by omission. You let me think your grandfather was still alive. You let me think we still had to maintain this charade. You let me think, her voice broke. You let me think what happened between us last night meant something. It did mean something. It means everything. Does it? Or are you just trying to keep me around because you've gotten used to having a wife? Cameron flinched like she'd slapped him. Is that really what you think of me? I don't know what to think anymore. Madison wrapped her arms around herself. I need some air. She turned to leave, but Cameron's voice stopped her. Don't go. Why not? Because I'm in love with you. Madison closed her eyes. How can you be in love with me? You don't even know me. I know you stayed up all night researching my company so you wouldn't embarrass me at the gala. I know you tip service workers exactly 30% because your mom taught you that good manners cost nothing. I know you're afraid of butterflies, but you'll hold a spider with your bare hands. Madison turned around slowly. How do you know all that? Because I've been watching you. Really watching you. For 3 days I've watched you navigate a world that's completely foreign to you, with more grace than women who were born into it. I've watched you be kind to my staff, patient with my schedule, and honest about everything. even when honesty wasn't in your best interest. Cameron stepped closer. I know you miss your mom, and you're scared about her surgery. I know you read romance novels when you think no one's looking, and you cry at dog videos on social media. I know you make this little humming sound when you're concentrating, and you always eat the corners of sandwiches first. Madison stared at him. You've been watching me eat. I've been watching everything about you because somewhere between Monday and today, you became the most important person in my world. Cameron, I should have told you about my grandfather. You're right, I was being selfish, but not because I wanted to keep the marriage going for business reasons. Cameron reached out and gently touched her face. Because I was terrified that if you knew the deal was over, you'd leave. Madison felt tears prick her eyes. I don't know how to trust you. Then don't. Not yet, but give me a chance to earn it. They stood there in silence for a moment, both afraid to move, afraid to breathe, afraid to break whatever fragile thing was building between them. The funeral, Madison said finally. Should I go with you? Do you want to? Madison looked into his eyes and saw pain there and vulnerability, and something that might have been hope. Yes, she said softly. If you want me there, I want you there. Not because of the will or the company or any of that. I want you there because... Cameron's voice cracked slightly. Because I don't think I can get through it alone. Madison felt her heart break a little. You won't be alone. The funeral was small and private, held at a chapel that looked like something out of a fairy tale. Madison stood beside Cameron as he said goodbye to the only family he'd ever really known, and when his hand found hers during the service, she squeezed it tight. Afterward, at the reading of the will, Madison sat in a leather chair that probably cost more than her old car and listened to a lawyer with a British accent read through the most complicated document she'd ever heard. And to my grandson, Cameron James Blackwood, I leave the entirety of Blackwood Industries, all associated assets, and my personal estate, provided that he is married at the time of my death and remains married for a period of no less than 1 year from the date of this reading. Madison's blood went cold. 1 year from the date of this reading, not from the date of the marriage. She looked at Cameron, who had gone very pale. I'm sorry, she said to the lawyer. Could you repeat that last part? Certainly. Mr. Cameron Blackwood inherits everything, provided he remains married for 1 year from today's date. Today's date, not 2 days ago when his grandfather died. Today. Which meant their agreement wasn't over. It was just beginning. There's more, the lawyer continued. Should the marriage end before the year is complete, for any reason including death or divorce, the entire estate passes to Derek Michael Blackwood. Madison felt like the room was spinning. She looked at Cameron, who was staring at the lawyer in shock. You didn't know, she whispered. I had no idea, Cameron said quietly. I thought it was just until he died. After the lawyer left, they sat in Cameron's office in stunned silence. So, Madison said finally, we're stuck with each other for another year. We don't have to be. Cameron's voice was careful. I can give you the $3 million now. You can walk away and Derek can have the company. And let 50,000 people lose their jobs because your cousin is an idiot. It's not your responsibility. Madison stood up and walked to the window. What if it was my choice? What do you mean? What if I wanted to stay? Not for the money, not for the deal, but because... She turned to face him. Because I think I'm falling in love with you, too. Cameron's expression was unreadable. Are you? I don't know. Maybe. This is all so complicated and crazy, and I don't know how to separate what's real from what's just proximity and adrenaline and really good chemistry. Cameron stood up and walked over to her. What if we tried to find out? How? By starting over. Not as business partners, not as fake spouses, but as two people who are attracted to each other and want to see where it goes. Madison felt her heart skip. For real this time? For real. No more lies, no more omissions, no more pretending. Just us, figuring out if this thing between us is worth a year of our lives. Madison looked into his eyes and saw something there that made her believe him. And if it doesn't work out, then we'll have given it an honest try. And maybe we'll end up friends. Very rich friends. Cameron smiled. The richest. Madison took a deep breath. Okay. Let's try. For real this time. She held out her hand. Hi, I'm Madison Clark. I'm a nurse. I read romance novels, and I'm terrified of butterflies. Cameron took her hand and brought it to his lips. Hi, Madison Clark. I'm Cameron Blackwood. I'm a workaholic. I don't know how to cook anything that doesn't come in a box, and I think I'm falling in love with you. Just think. Cameron's smile was soft and real, and absolutely devastating. I'm pretty sure. And as he leaned down to kiss her, their first real kiss, with no audience, no cameras, no agenda except the desire to touch each other, Madison thought maybe being stuck with each other for a year wouldn't be such a terrible thing after all. 3 months into their real relationship, Madison woke up to find Cameron's side of the bed cold and empty. They'd been sharing the master bedroom for 6 weeks now, a progression that felt as natural as breathing. First, late-night conversations had stretched until dawn. Then Cameron had fallen asleep on her couch. Then she'd found herself in his bed after a particularly intense make-out session, both of them too exhausted to move to separate rooms. Now, waking up without him felt wrong. Madison found him in his office at 5 a.m., surrounded by papers, and looking like he hadn't slept at all. Morning, she said softly, setting a cup of coffee on his desk. Rough night? Cameron looked up, and Madison was startled by the exhaustion in his eyes. Derek's mounting a legal challenge. What kind of challenge? He's claiming our marriage is fraudulent, that we entered into it solely for financial gain, which apparently violates the spirit of my grandfather's will. Madison felt cold fingers of dread crawling up her spine. Can he do that? He can try. His lawyers filed papers yesterday claiming they have evidence that our relationship is manufactured for inheritance purposes. Cameron rubbed his face. There's going to be an investigation. What kind of evidence could he possibly have? Cameron was quiet for too long. Cameron, what kind of evidence? Photos of our wedding day, of you signing the prenup, of... Cameron's voice was barely above a whisper. Of the original contract I had drawn up, the one that outlined our business arrangement. Madison's coffee cup slipped from her hands, shattering on the hardwood floor. He has the contract? Someone leaked it to him. My lawyers are trying to figure out who, but it doesn't matter, does it? Because it's real. Because that's exactly what this started as. Madison sank into the chair across from his desk. Oh God, Cameron. We're going to lose everything. Not everything. You'll still get your money. The $3 million is in a separate account. Derek can't touch that. I don't care about the money. The words exploded out of her before she could stop them. I care about you. I care about us. I care about the fact that what we have now is real, and Derek's going to destroy it by dragging our private business through the courts. Cameron looked at her with something that might have been surprise. You really don't care about the money? Of course I don't care about the money. I mean, yes, it's life-changing, and yes, it's solving problems I couldn't solve on my own. But Cameron? Madison leaned forward. I'd give it all back if it meant we could just be together without all this legal drama hanging over our heads. You can't mean that. I absolutely mean that. The money was supposed to solve my problems, but the biggest problem in my life right now is the possibility of losing you. Cameron stared at her for a long moment. Madison, I love you, she said simply. I'm in love with you, not with your money, not with this house, not with the lifestyle. With you. With the man who carries me upstairs when I fall asleep reading. With the man who learned to make pancakes because he found out they're my favorite breakfast. With the man who holds me when I have nightmares about my mom's surgery. Cameron's expression was unreadable. The investigation will tear us apart. They'll want to interview everyone we know, examine every aspect of our relationship, question every public appearance we've made. So we'll get through it together. Madison, you don't understand. They'll drag your name through the mud. They'll paint you as a gold digger who seduced me for money. They'll examine every detail of your financial situation, your family, your past relationships. Madison felt sick, but she forced herself to speak calmly. Then we'll prove them wrong. How? How do we prove that what started as a business deal became real? How do we prove that you didn't just get better at acting? The question hung in the air between them like a blade. Do you think I'm acting? Madison whispered. Cameron's silence was answer enough. Madison stood up slowly, her heart breaking with each second he didn't respond. I see, she said quietly. After 3 months of sharing your bed, sharing your life, sharing everything with you, you still don't trust me. It's not about trust. It's exactly about trust. Madison's voice was getting stronger, anger replacing hurt. You think I'm such a good actress that I've been faking every laugh, every kiss, every moment of intimacy we've shared. That's not what I said. It's what you implied. And you know what, Cameron? If that's really what you think of me, then maybe Derek's right. Maybe this marriage is fraudulent. Cameron stood up abruptly. Don't say that. Why not? If you can't tell the difference between me acting and me loving you, then what's the point? The point is that I can't lose you. You already have. The words came out quieter than Madison intended, but they hit Cameron like a physical blow. Madison, please. I'm scared. I'm scared that when this investigation starts, you'll realize that being with me isn't worth the scrutiny and the pressure and the media attention. I'm scared that you'll decide the money isn't worth the hassle of being married to me. Then you don't know me at all. Madison walked toward the door, then turned back. For the record, Cameron, I've never been a good actress. Every emotion you've seen from me has been real. Every moment of happiness, every laugh, every time I've told you I love you, it's all been real. She paused in the doorway. I'm sorry you can't see that. The next week was hell. Madison moved back to the guest bedroom, and they barely spoke except when absolutely necessary. The investigation began in earnest, with lawyers and private investigators crawling through every aspect of their lives. Madison sat through 3 separate depositions, answering increasingly invasive questions about her motivations, her feelings, and her relationship with Cameron. She watched strangers dissect her mother's medical bills, her student loans, her employment history. The media had gotten hold of the story, and suddenly Madison couldn't leave the house without being followed by photographers asking if she was a gold digger. Mrs. Blackwood, is it true you married for money? Madison, are you divorcing Cameron for the payout? How does it feel to be called a con artist? On Friday evening, Madison found Cameron in the library, staring into the fireplace with a glass of whiskey. The lawyers want to meet tomorrow, he said without looking at her. They think we should consider an amicable divorce. Madison felt her heart stop. What? Derek's team has built a strong case. They have the original contract, photos from Vegas, testimony from people who knew we'd only known each other for a few days before the wedding. Cameron's voice was flat, emotionless. My lawyers think if we divorce now, and you give back the $3 million, they might drop the fraud charges. And if we don't, then we could both face criminal charges for defrauding the estate. Madison sank into the chair across from him. So that's it? We just give up? It might be for the best. For who? For Derek? For the lawyers? For the media? For you. Cameron finally looked at her, and his eyes were full of pain. Madison, this is destroying you. I can see it. You haven't eaten properly in days. You barely sleep. And when you do sleep, you have nightmares. This isn't what you signed up for. You're right, Madison said quietly. This isn't what I signed up for. I signed up for a simple business deal. What I got was falling in love with my husband. Cameron flinched. Madison, I'm not done. Madison stood up, her voice gaining strength. What I got was discovering that you're funny and kind and brilliant and completely hopeless at doing laundry. What I got was realizing that I'd rather face a dozen investigations and 100 reporters than spend one day without you. You say that now, but I say that because it's true. Cameron, do you love me? The question hung in the air between them. Answer me, Madison said. Do you love me? Not the idea of me, not the convenience of having a wife, but me. Madison Clark from Sherman Oaks, who's afraid of butterflies and reads too many romance novels. Cameron was quiet for so long that Madison started to think he wouldn't answer. Yes, he said finally. I love you so much it terrifies me. Then fight for us. Madison, fight for us, Cameron. Don't let Derek win. Don't let fear win. Fight for what we have. Cameron set down his glass and stood up, moving closer to her. What if we lose everything? Then we lose everything together. But at least we'll know we tried. Cameron cupped her face in his hands. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I doubted you. I'm sorry I let fear make me stupid. And I'm sorry I ever made you feel like I didn't believe in us. I'm sorry too. I'm sorry I walked away instead of fighting for us from the beginning. Cameron leaned down and kissed her, soft and desperate and full of promise. So what do we do now? Madison whispered against his lips. Cameron's smile was the first genuine one she'd seen from him in weeks. Now, he said, we prove that love is stronger than money. And we make Derek regret the day he decided to mess with the Blackwoods. 6 months later, Madison stood in front of a judge who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else in the world. This court will now hear the case of Blackwood versus Blackwood, regarding the validity of the marriage between Cameron James Blackwood and Madison Rose Blackwood, formerly Clark. The courtroom was packed. Derek sat at the plaintiff's table with his team of expensive lawyers, looking smug and confident. Victoria Harrington sat in the front row behind him, apparently enjoying the drama. The media filled the back rows, cameras trained on every movement. Madison reached for Cameron's hand under the table, and he squeezed it reassuringly. Ready? He whispered. Ready, she whispered back. Derek's lawyer stood up first, a sharp-faced woman in a power suit who looked like she ate opposing counsel for breakfast. Your Honor, we will prove that this marriage is nothing more than an elaborate fraud, designed to circumvent the clear intentions of Harold Blackwood's will. The defendants entered into a purely transactional arrangement, complete with written contracts outlining payment terms and duration of services. She gestured dramatically toward Cameron and Madison. This is not a marriage born of love, Your Honor. This is a business deal dressed up in wedding attire. For the next 2 hours, Derek's team presented their case. They had the original contract, somehow leaked by someone in Cameron's legal team. They had photos from Vegas showing Madison looking shell-shocked. They had testimony from wedding chapel employees saying the couple seemed businesslike and distant. Madison watched the judge's expression grow more skeptical with each piece of evidence. When it was their turn, Cameron's lawyer, a brilliant woman named Sarah Chen, stood up with quiet confidence. Your Honor, no one disputes that this marriage began as a business arrangement. But what the plaintiff fails to understand is that love doesn't follow contracts or timelines or legal expectations. Sarah walked toward the judge's bench. We will show that what began as convenience became something real, something deep, something worth fighting for. Because that's what love does. It transforms everything it touches. The first witness Sarah called was Margaret. I've worked for the Blackwood family for 15 years, Margaret said, her voice clear and strong. I've seen Mr. Cameron with many women. I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at his wife. Can you elaborate? The first morning after their wedding, Mr. Cameron carried Mrs. Madison upstairs because she was exhausted. He could have left her on the couch, but he didn't. He tucked her into the guest room and slept on a different floor entirely, just to make sure she felt safe. Margaret's eyes found Madison in the courtroom. I've watched them fall in love over pancakes and morning coffee. I've seen them laugh until they cry at terrible movies. I've watched Mr. Cameron learn to cook because Mrs. Madison mentioned she missed her mother's soup. And you believe their feelings are genuine? Your Honor, I've been managing households for 30 years. I can tell the difference between people acting and people in love. These two are definitely in love. The next witness was Dr. Patricia Reeves, Madison's mother's cardiac surgeon. I first met Mrs. Blackwood in my office 6 months ago, Dr. Reeves testified. She was there to discuss her mother's surgery options. What struck me immediately was that she wasn't there alone. What do you mean? Her husband was with her. Not just physically present, but emotionally engaged. He asked detailed questions about recovery times, post-surgical care, potential complications. He wanted to understand every aspect of what his wife and her mother were facing. Dr. Reeves looked directly at the judge. Your Honor, I've seen many family meetings in my career. I can tell when someone is there out of obligation versus genuine care. Mr. Blackwood was there because he loves his wife, and by extension, he loves her family. But it was the third witness who changed everything. I call Harold Blackwood to the stand, Sarah announced. The courtroom erupted. Derek shot to his feet. Objection! Harold Blackwood is deceased. Not Harold Sr., Your Honor. Harold Jr., Mr. Blackwood's great-nephew, who was present at the hospital the night Harold Sr. passed away. A young man in his 20s walked to the witness stand, and Madison realized she'd never seen him before. State your name for the record. Harold Blackwood, Jr. I'm the son of Harold Sr.'s nephew, Robert. Were you present at Cedars-Sinai Hospital on the night your great-uncle passed away? Yes, I was. Can you tell the court what you witnessed? Harold Jr. cleared his throat. I was in the hallway around 11 p.m. when I heard my great-uncle talking to someone on the phone. He was saying goodbye. Sarah nodded encouragingly. What exactly did you hear? He said, Cameron, I know you think this marriage is just business, but I've seen the photos from that charity gala. I've seen the way you look at her. Don't let my stubbornness about marriage clauses stop you from being happy. The courtroom was dead silent. Did you hear anything else? Yes. He said, the will isn't about the money, son. It's about making sure you don't end up alone like I did. If you love her, fight for her. And if she loves you back, then you've already won everything that matters. Harold Jr. looked directly at Derek. Then he said, and if Derek contests this marriage, remind him that I changed the will one final time. The inheritance only matters if Cameron chooses to accept it. If he'd rather have love than money, then he can walk away with both his wife and my blessing. Derek's face went white. That's impossible. The will was finalized months before. Actually, Harold Jr. continued, Great-Uncle Harold called his lawyer that night, from his hospital bed, at 11:47 p.m., 43 minutes before he passed away. Sarah walked to the plaintiff's table and set down a document. Your Honor, this is a codicil to Harold Blackwood Sr.'s will, properly witnessed and notarized, giving Cameron the option to choose love over inheritance. The judge took the document and read it carefully. When he looked up, his expression had completely changed. Mr. Derek Blackwood, the judge said sternly, are you aware that filing a fraudulent lawsuit is a serious offense? Derek's lawyer whispered frantically in his ear. Your Honor, she said finally, my client would like to withdraw the complaint. I'm sure he would. Unfortunately, this court doesn't appreciate having its time wasted. The judge's voice was ice cold. Mr. Derek Blackwood, you will pay all court costs for both parties. Additionally, you will publicly apologize to Mr. and Mrs. Cameron Blackwood for this frivolous lawsuit. He turned to Cameron and Madison. As for the validity of your marriage, this court finds that while it may have begun as a business arrangement, the evidence clearly shows it has evolved into a genuine partnership built on love and mutual respect. Marriage validated. The gavel came down with a resounding bang. The courtroom erupted in chaos. Reporters rushed toward the exits. Derek slumped in his chair, defeated. Victoria slipped out a side door, probably already planning her next scheme. But Madison only had eyes for Cameron, who was looking at her like she was the most precious thing in the world. "We won," she said, hardly believing it. "We won," he agreed, pulling her into his arms and spinning her around right there in the courtroom. When he set her down, Madison cupped his face in her hands. "Cameron, about what Harold Jr. said. About choosing love over money." "I already chose," Cameron said firmly. "I chose the moment I realized I'd rather be broke with you than rich without you." "You mean that?" "I mean it. Madison, if we'd lost today, if Derek had gotten everything, it wouldn't have mattered, because I'd still have you." Madison felt tears streaming down her cheeks. "I love you so much. I love you too. Forever and always." As they kissed in the middle of the courthouse, surrounded by chaos and cameras and the remnants of Derek's failed scheme, Madison thought about how much her life had changed. A year ago, she'd been a struggling nurse facing eviction and impossible choices. Now she was married to her best friend, her lover, her partner in everything. They had more money than they could spend in 10 lifetimes, but more importantly, they had each other. "So," Cameron said when they finally broke apart, "what do you want to do now, Mrs. Blackwood?" Madison grinned. "Now? Now I want to go home and let my husband make me those terrible pancakes while I tell him all the ways I plan to spend the rest of our lives together." "All the ways?" "Well, the ones that are appropriate for public discussion." Cameron's laugh was rich and joyful. "I love the way your mind works. Good thing, since you're stuck with me forever." Forever sounds perfect. Epilogue. 2 years later. Madison stood in the renovated children's wing of Cedar General Hospital, watching Cameron read stories to a group of young patients. The wing had been his idea, a way to give back to the community and honor Madison's nursing background. And then the dragon realized that the princess didn't need rescuing at all, Cameron was saying, his voice animated as he read from a picture book. She was perfectly capable of rescuing herself. But that didn't mean she didn't want a partner for the adventure. A little girl with pigtails raised her hand. "Mr. Cameron, is that story about you and Mrs. Madison?" Cameron caught Madison's eye and winked. "Maybe a little bit, Emma. Are you going to have adventures together forever?" "That's the plan." Later that evening, as they sat in their garden watching the sunset, Madison curled up against Cameron's side. "Any regrets?" she asked, the question that had become their private joke. "Just one," Cameron said seriously. Madison pulled back to look at him. "Really? What?" "I regret that it took a helicopter explosion to bring us together. I should have found a less dramatic way to sweep you off your feet." Madison laughed. "Are you kidding? That helicopter explosion is the best thing that ever happened to me. Even better than the $3 million? Especially better than the $3 million. Madison stretched up to kiss him. "Though I have to admit, the money doesn't hurt. Good thing, since we're about to spend a lot of it on baby furniture." Madison froze. "What did you just say?" Cameron's grin was brilliant. "Margaret told me about the pregnancy test in your bathroom drawer. Congratulations, Mrs. Blackwood. We're going to be parents." Madison stared at him in shock, then started laughing. "I was going to surprise you at dinner." "Margaret ruins all the best surprises. I'm going to have words with that woman." "Are you happy?" Cameron asked, his expression suddenly vulnerable. Madison looked at her husband. This incredible man who'd crashed into her life and turned everything upside down in the best possible way, and felt her heart overflow with joy. "Cameron Blackwood," she said, "I have never been happier in my entire life. Even though our kid is going to inherit the most ridiculous origin story in history, especially because of that. Our child is going to know that sometimes the best things in life start with the craziest risks, and that love is worth fighting for, and that helicopter explosions make excellent meet-cutes." Cameron laughed and pulled her closer. "I love you, Madison Blackwood. I love you too, Cameron Blackwood, forever and always." As the sun set over Los Angeles, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Madison reflected on the journey that had brought them here. From a staged helicopter crash to a real marriage, from a business deal to true love, from two strangers to a family. It had been the most insane, wonderful, terrifying, perfect adventure of her life. And it was just the beginning.